Welcome to another episode of Chomp Talk. I am Vince Solis, proud president of Brazosport College. This is March 2026, and with March comes Women's History Month. So we are really excited about our guest today, but we are really excited about hosting a several-part series with amazing women leaders in our community, in our region, and in today's instance, kicking off this series of amazing women at BC is a regional leader, but also a national leader. We have with us Carol Del Carlo, who is the chair of the Association of Community College Trustees, representing almost 1,000 institutions of higher education from across the nation. We are really excited to have her here. And as we kick off Women's History Month, we are reminded that March is not just a placeholder on the calendar. It is a daily reminder that progress doesn't happen by accident. Regent Carol Del Carlo, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much, Dr. Solis.
Thanks for coming in all the way from Nevada.
Via San Antonio.
Via San Antonio. You were in the area. I said, hey, we got to get you to the podcast. You were there for the Bellwether Awards.
Yes, I was a judge. Nobody knew that at the time, but yes, that's one of the perks of being the chair for a year. You're invited to be a judge, and I loved it. I judged in the workforce category, and I serve on our workforce committee on the Nevada System of Higher Ed. So it was right up my alley, and there was some tough competition.
Well, and for the viewing audience, the Bellwether Awards is a really big honor to receive if you're an institution that gets selected to do that. So sounds like the region was busy doing some judging of institutions. Regent, before we get started, I've got this cover that I wanted to show.
It just came out.
Hot off the presses. So this is Trustee Magazine, and my dear friend Carol Del Carlo made the cover because she's the national chair and she got selected. So I want to talk about your story, Carol. Okay. I want to talk about your leadership skills, your abilities, and all that you've done. But I want to start off with a story of resilience because this is how I remember, but correct me if this is wrong. I remember several years ago, we were having a conversation about your interest in serving on the board of this national association. And I remember asking, Regent Del Carlo, why do you want to do something? You're already busy enough as it is. And you said something to the effect of, it's important to lean in and to have a voice at the table. So we had that discussion, and I remember it clearly. So you gear up your campaign because you have to be elected. This is not, you're selected by your peers, right? So this is not an easy accomplishment. So the first step is getting on this very prestigious board. And then after that, you worked your way from being a board member to being the chair, which all of this has happened over the last 5 years. But prior to that, tell us a little bit about what happened your first at bat, because I want to talk about resiliency and why that's so important, because your first attempt didn't go as planned, right? So walk us through that. Walk the audience through that.
It didn't go through that when you only got 2 votes and one of them was yours.
Yeah.
And this is a board of 26.
Yeah.
So I had been appointed first because, all over the country, there's 5 regions, and within the regions, there's X amount. We have a board of 26. So I got appointed first. Then I had to run, and they decide, you go to a nominating committee, and they decide if you're going to run for your own region. And being in Nevada, we're from the Pacific region, or if they're going to have you run nationally. So all 5 regions. Well, of course, they told me I had to run nationally.
Sure.
So because the other lady they were helping, they had her run in the region. She was a much quieter person than me. They thought I wouldn't have any trouble. But it was a lot of work, I have to say. You just can't take it for granted because other people want the position.
Sure, absolutely. It's very prestigious.
Yeah, and you only get 2 minutes to do your little elevator speech, and that's really the impression they have of you, other than trying to look at everybody's logo and see if they're a delegate or whatever.
Yeah, because they come from all over the country. So this is a big job. So part of the story that I'll never forget, because you said, hey, I'm going to try this out, and I'm going to go for it. And there's these 26-member board. And to your point, 2 people voted for you, and one of them was you, right? So that means that one person voted for you. At that point, why didn't you give up? And most people would have said, hey, you know what? I took a shot, didn't do it, I didn't do well, and I'm moving on to something else. But you didn't. So that's why I want to talk about this resiliency piece. Where does that fire come from? So you could have easily just said, I got other things to do, right?
Right.
But you stuck with this. You get elected at, next time.
Next time.
And then you just kept building and building and building. And now here you are today on the cover of Trustee Magazine, sitting as the chair of this very
I know
large.
it.
I mean, what? Talk to the audience about where does that fire come from? You could have given up. Why didn't you?
I didn't give up because I had a second chance. Because it's all about timing. You have to be able to, it's like 2 times in a row you can try for this. And if you don't make it the second time, you don't make it.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, I only got 2 votes and there's only one way to go but up.
Right? That's a good way to
So
look at
I
it.
figured I'm going to do it again. And yeah, I was disappointed.
Sure.
Very disappointed, especially when, I mean, I'm political. I know what you have to do to get to the number. And I had people, oh, yeah, I'm voting for
Sure.
you, I'm voting for you. And I'm going, oh my God, I voted for me. Somebody else voted for me.
So I
That
guess
was it.
everybody else said I was the one that voted for
Oh,
you,
yeah.
right? You know,
Well,
it's
I
part
had
of
it
the
figured
process.
out, and it was okay.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like there's timing. It wasn't maybe the right time
But
or
it worked
whatever.
out well.
But it worked out great. It worked out great.
why
So I
didn't you
tried
give up?
again.
Why didn't you give up? Because it's the
Because
easiest.
it's not within me to
Yeah.
give up because I'm a fighter
Yeah.
and no, I
But you
just
didn't
tried
give
again.
up.
No, I didn't give up.
That's awesome.
And then I won the next year, and that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
How I won. I mean, it was still crazy, but
Tell
I-
us a little bit about your background, Regent. So
Okay.
you came from the world of business.
right,
You worked at GM
Right.
at a time where it was not popular to have women in
That's
leadership roles,
right.
and you were successful there. How did you navigate that? Because at that point, you were a very young version of Carol, right? So
I hired in at 29.
so you got hired into
Long-
GM at 29.
Long time ago.
It's this male-dominated world,
Yeah.
and then Carol Del Carlo shows up. And so how did you navigate that?
Well, I have to say it wasn't easy,
Oh.
but I believed in myself, and I had a mother that was so strong behind me, and she was always giving me advice and pushing me because she never had the opportunities I had.
Yeah.
And I don't think women realize today how little opportunity some of us had, and it's gotten so much better. I mean, I've seen
So-
that in my career.
So, Regina, at what point did you decide that you belonged at the table? So you had your mom as your mentor, and she pushed, for the things that she didn't have in terms of opportunities. At what point did you realize, hey, not only do I belong here, but I can thrive here? How did you navigate that?
Well, I just looked around me and thought I can compete. I can do this. I mean, why not me?
Yeah.
I had faith in myself. You have to believe in yourself first.
do.
And you have to have confidence and you have to have high self-esteem.
You do.
If you don't have those 3 qualities, I mean, you're not going to survive.
So one of the things that I've always admired about you, and we've talked about this, I'm like, there's very little filter with you, right? Because you're going to say what's on your mind, and it
know.
just happens. But I guess in the same way that you recognize that you could thrive at the table, when did you realize that your voice mattered in where decisions were being made? Because like I said, you've had a real successful career. You and your husband have done really, really well as business people, as entrepreneurs. You've done a lot of service in your state. But at some point, you realized that your voice was needed and mattered at the table where decisions were being made. When did that happen for you?
Well, in my GM career, I remember I was the only female in the middle management group. And the boss plant manager did not care for me. I think because I was a female, not because I wasn't capable and
Right.
competent. So I had 2 peers that used to tell me, we'd have board meetings a meeting once a week. They used to come to me because the boss would just shoot me down, whatever I brought to the table. And my colleague said to me, why don't you tell us your idea and then we'll bring it up.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
God, I couldn't believe that. I said,
So
absolutely not.
let me steal your idea. Let me take it to the boss. So you said, no way, Jose.
No way, Jose.
Yeah.
And so I just fought. I was there 6 years. It was the hardest assignment I ever had. I was in the Deep South in Atlanta.
But let's go back to how did you process this? The guys come to you and say, give us your ideas and we'll present them on your behalf, or not even on your behalf. We'll present the idea and
They'll
see.
just present them as their own.
Wow.
I said, there's no way. Those are my ideas.
So you kept at it.
Yeah, I kept at it. And I have to say, after 6 years in this environment, and it was really, well, he wasn't, there was 2 managers in that time, but it was with him the most time. He actually apologized to me, not publicly, but one-on-one when I
After
left.
how long? How much time had passed?
Oh,
that he realized
4 years.
So after 4 years, he's like, hey, this lady's really sharp.
Yeah.
I need her on the team. So what did he say?
Well, he apologized for treating me the way he did.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this. So, You've dealt with a lot of different leadership components. You have, like I said, you're now this very prestigious role. You're also a trustee in your home state of Nevada. How do you balance what you do in your personal life and then all of these other commitments? So you were just in San Antonio, now you're in Lake Jackson. You'll be at something else soon. Prior to this, you were in DC advocating for the
Right.
How do you balance all of this? How do you make life happen and do all the things? And you're volunteering to boot. So
Right.
how do you make all that happen?
Well, my husband probably will disagree, but I have learned to say no.
Okay.
In my past years, I have not been able to say no to things because when I was asked, I was always yes. And then it got crazy because you just don't have enough time in the day. And I have to say that all the time and commitment I'm doing now comes at expense of spending time with my husband.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and he's been so supportive. I'm really appreciative of that. And
So balancing that out is really
yeah, and
important.
I even have him read stuff once in a while to make sure that I'm getting it.
Sounding board.
Yeah, he's my
Yeah.
great sounding board. I mean, we've been together almost 55 years, and
That's amazing.
yeah, it's an amazing partnership. So
Good.
I really credit him. And when you go back and you said I kind of up front, he'll always say to me, Carol, are you sure you don't want to sugarcoat that?
You want to be a little bit softer there
I
in
go,
your
no, that's
in your
exactly what I
messaging.
meant.
So you've evolved into the leader that you are today after many, many years of being involved in leadership roles and stepping in and leaning in and taking on these difficult fights at a time, as we discussed, where women were not welcomed at that table. What would you go back and tell your younger Carol self? So if you could go back 30 years, 40 years, 50 years when you were working and you're approaching that young version, what would you go back and tell that person?
Probably, I have no regrets
And
for my path. I have no regrets because Um, I don't think that gets you anywhere when you do. I really don't. And I was knocking down doors. I mean, I was the first female trainee at our Sears Roebuck. I was first going to go into a fashion merchandising career, which I loved fashion. I loved all of that, but it wasn't conducive to my husband's military career. And I met my husband the first weekend at the University of Nevada, Reno, my first football game, and I got married the next summer. So
yeah,
I had to give up what I really wanted to pursue and find something that was compatible to his career, and I was really gonna go into I didn't want to ever be a nurse, I don't like blood and all that stuff, or teaching. Teaching is very compatible if you're a military wife to take it anywhere in the world, so I went to be a business teacher, and then when I finally finished my degree, all I needed to do was student teach, and then I got this knock that General Motors had just moved to Reno. We'd come home from Germany, and my husband was teaching ROTC at the university, and for what
it worked
GM
out.
paid compared to what a teacher
Oh,
paid,
sure.
oh my, like
Yeah.
triple. I mean, it was just crazy money. I mean,
So let's talk about this concept of opening doors, or in this
mhm,
case, Carol Del Carlo busting those doors down, right? Because you had to overcome a lot of barriers.
yeah,
In many instances, I've heard people introduce you a lot of different times, and it never ceases to amaze me that, well, she was the first this, she was the first that, she was the first person. So many times people describe you as the first, right? So obviously you did a lot of door knocking down, right? That was
yeah.
important. But at some point you learned the difference between the influence and the authority that you have as a region, right? So I've never, in all the years that I've known you, I've never seen you use authority. I've always seen you use your influence, and you've got a really good way with people, and you can deliver difficult messages. I guess at what point in your career did you figure that out, that influence is more important than the authority that comes with the title?
I think just early on, just my personality, because I've always been a people person. I'm one of those that have always wanted people to like me and stuff. And there is a thin line between the two. But I've always felt, and this is going back to my mom. You can always attract more flies with honey than you can with vinegar.
Sure.
I mean, if you treat people with
Well,
respect and dignity,
yeah,
it comes back in spades to
it
you.
does.
It does.
My dad always used to tell me, and my mom too. My mom had this thing about sharing. A testament to the moms that help shape everybody around us. My mom would say, You have to be benevolent, even if you don't have much,
That's
right?
right.
And my dad would always say, be good to people. That was one of his
Oh,
rules. My dad had a
absolutely.
couple of rules, but he would always say, be good to people and people will be good to you. So
That
that's
is
been a
so
big part of your
true.
strategy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, kindness wins over anything.
So why take the time to mentor folks? So you've been a mentor to a lot of people, myself included. I've always counted you as someone that I can call and we still have
Oh, we
conversations. And
do.
I say, Regent, I need to bounce something off you. What are your thoughts on this? Why mentor? Why take time to do that? Why is it important to mentor the next generation?
Well, I was mentored.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful mentor in General Motors, and she was a dear friend until she passed away right after she retired.
Yeah.
Um, and we had a nice personal friendship, and my husband and I are the godparents of her only child,
Yeah.
and we're still close friends. In fact, her husband called me yesterday when I was here, and I just think it's so important because nobody does anything alone.
No,
We're not here alone. We're here as human beings to have relationships and team build and get along, and you can get so much more done when people are, leadership is about getting everybody on to follow you and
right.
get you on the same team. And,
So how do you balance that influence? Which again, you've mastered this uh, to get to where you're at. But how do you differentiate being liked and being respected? Right, they're two different
there's a
things.
big
Big
difference.
difference.
Big difference.
And I think that the biggest thing was people know when you're in the room. Right,
Yeah.
that goes to that respect piece. But once people get to know you, there's that I like her piece. Right. So.
Yeah.
But these are different components to
Yeah.
leadership. So talk to the audience a little bit about that.
Oh,
I'd be interested to
okay.
find out your perspectives on being liked. And it's not always going to happen because you have to make difficult decisions,
Right.
right?
Right.
Ideally, yeah, you want people, but you also have to be comfortable knowing that as a leader, you got to make difficult decisions, which you've made plenty of.
Right.
But the difference between that respect and being liked, walk us through that.
I see it as kind of, I don't have children, but I could see it in being a parent. There's a time to be their friend and a time to be their parent. And it's not, you're not their friend when they're growing up and you're the parent. And when they're 18 and older, then you guys can be friends. It's kind of that way when you have,
A mentoring relationship.
employees under you. You're the boss, and you have to set the direction, and you have to hold them all accountable. And they're not always gonna like it.
Right, but you've also always been very caring, and for you, it's always been about the people. I remember
Right.
when I worked for you, you would always stress, "How are you taking care of the people? What are you doing for the team? How is the
Right.
team doing?" So it wasn't just about the pieces that came with, going back to that authority piece, right? You always stress, to me at least, how is the team doing? How are the folks? What are you working on? So there was always these questions about the team and the people around you and how are they doing and what can we do to support them. That was another thing you'd always ask. What do you need from us?
Yeah.
And what I appreciated the most was that it was a sincere question. It
Yeah.
wasn't one of these, "Hey, how are you? What's going on?" It was, "Let's talk. How are things going at the college? What can I do as a region to support your path and your journey?" And I think that for me not only allowed the information to flow both ways, because I would always tell you, "Hey, these are the things that we're doing really well. Here are some challenges." But you'd always circle back to people, whether it was myself, "How are you doing? What's going on? Are you taking time for yourself?" et cetera. But you'd always center back with the team. So you balance that out really well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Nothing happens without people.
it doesn't.
Nothing
Yeah.
happens. And it's funny that our
Right?
magazine would
Comes
come
back.
when I'm here.
Yesterday when they
mailed
walked
them.
in, they're like, "Isn't this lady coming to campus?" I looked at it, I said, "Yeah, she's going to be here tomorrow on the podcast." So serendipitous, or maybe the universe is just intervening, but we're very proud of all that you've accomplished.
Thank you. And I would say, I'm pointing that out because as the chair, you get to pick a theme for the year. And I was just, we focus, our whole purpose is students. Don't ever
Yeah.
get me wrong. Students, students, students. They're our North Star. We would not be in our positions without the
Yeah.
students. But setting that aside, these are tough times.
Yeah.
Really tough times for higher ed. The whole value proposition of higher education, the perception keeps going down every
Every year.
year. Why should I go in debt to get a degree? All of that. So I focused this year on the health and well-being of the CEO, chancellor, president,
Yeah.
like you. And
Yeah.
I saw
I
that.
appreciate that.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
saw that in one of my senior leaders in Nevada. And it's in the article. I talk about it.
Yeah.
He didn't look good to me. And I'm really upfront. And I said to him, are you okay? You don't look good.
Shocking. Shocking, right?
And I would say it like that, right? And we have enough of a relationship
Yeah.
that he confided in me and said, "No, I'm not. my blood pressure's up,
Oh,
my weight's up, my cholesterol's up. And I mean, these are hard jobs.
they are.
President has a very difficult job. You have so many constituency groups pulling you in different directions. I mean, a lot of places have it's faculty, the students, the
Yeah.
admin staff. Some of them are unions. You've got your foundations. You've got the public out there.
That thousand
All
voice to
those.
balance. You've always talked about that. How do you balance 1,000
How
voices?
do you balance all that and still accomplish the mission of your institution?
Well, speaking on behalf of myself as the CEO of this amazing institution, and for all the CEOs that participate with the Association of Community College Trustees, I want to thank you for supporting the CEOs and taking that as this year's mantra, the health and well-being of leaders, because we have to be on point. There are so many people counting on our
Yep.
decisions, on our well-being, on our ability to bring clarity to that chaos, right? So all those voices that are chiming in, how do you bring clarity to that focus? So I appreciate you as the chair of this organization, putting that as the senior focus.
Thank you,
Absolutely
because
great.
that president, just to update, is much better.
Good.
He's lost some weight. He's
Good.
taken control of his health.
We will keep them in our prayers. Regent,
Absolutely.
let me go back to the boardroom, and let me go back to roles of leadership. Let me go back to an early part of your career. So when you were dealing with being dismissed, right? So somebody's being dismissive of you. They won't listen to you. They won't take what you're saying at face value because of who you are, where you came from, because of your gender, all these things that you were grappling with as you were coming up in the ranks. How did you not lose your composure? How did you not get, just upset right there? And how did you remain, not only composed, but obviously you climbed the ranks.
Yep.
You continued to make forward progress. You
Right.
continue to get the job done. You were very successful. How did you not lose your composure? Because that's easy to do. And I see it all the times where leaders just have that one moment where the top blows off, and obviously there's regret afterwards. But at that point, the gravitas of being a CEO and being a leader at this level, you're one mistake from the end of your career, right?
Right. Right.
So you have to have that sense about you all the time, that composure. But how did you not lose it? Because it's easy to have the composure when you're dealing with a difficult situation, because hopefully by this point in someone's career you've been trained, you've had the right background, you've had the pedigree to be successful in your role as a CEO. But when you were young and coming up, you were not only had great ideas, but you were being dismissed because you were a woman.
Right.
So how did you not just let that person have it? Like, how did you keep your composure?
Okay. That's a great question, and I take it back to when I hired in at GM. They had a program to pay tuition so you could get your master's.
Okay.
So I went and did that, and I didn't want an MBA. I'm not a numbers person per se. I'm more the people side of the house. So I got it in human resources management with an emphasis in organizational development, which
Okay.
is what I really love. And one of the things I learned in my master's program is transactional analysis.
Yep.
Do you know it?
Sure.
Yeah, there's 3 states of your mind. There's the child state, there's the adult state, and the child, adult, and there's one other. I can't think of it. But when you get emotional, you're in a child state. And until you can get out of that child state, either the employee or you're not going to, reasoning's not going to take
Right.
place.
The emotion's too
Yeah,
high.
you have to. And a really great example of this, when I worked in Atlanta, we had 750 UAW represented employees, United Auto Workers,
Yeah.
one of the biggest, strongest unions in the United States. And I didn't have a problem with any of that. But I did have a problem the day the shop steward walked into my office screaming and yelling at me,
The screaming and yelling.
screaming and
Yeah.
yelling, poking, his fingers in my face. And I just looked at him and let him have his tantrum. And then I very calmly looked at him and I said, "Don, get out of my office.
Nice. Good
You
for
are
you.
not welcome. When you can settle down and cool down, I don't care if it's tomorrow, if it's a week from now, you and I will talk. And until that happens, you're not welcome."
So how long in your career were you into it? Because obviously you had learned a few things along the way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you'd been in the role how long before you were able to really sit there and say, hey, time out. When you're done with your tantrum, come back and we'll talk about it. But you'd already been in the role a while.
Oh, probably, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7
Okay.
years. I'm
So
not really sure, but I mean, how am I going to reason with someone that's
you
screaming at
can't.
you? You
You
can't. And
can't.
he's poking his finger at me.
So
and
what did he
getting
do
my
when you
face.
told him to leave?
He left. I'd have called security on him if he hadn't, but I didn't have
Yeah,
to. He had enough
okay.
respect for me.
Good.
And so guess what? Like 1 or 2 days later, I don't remember. He comes and he knocks on my door, and my door's open, but he knocked on it anyway.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm ready to talk. Are you? I said, absolutely. Come on in.
Well, kudos to you for
Yeah.
standing up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because the easiest thing that you could have done was cower down and just say, oh my God, I'm being
Yeah.
yelled at. But by that point, you'd already had a few calluses under your.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Speaking of calluses, want me to give you another good story?
Sure.
Okay, so here I am in this 750 employee warehouse, and I'm the only female in middle management. We had
You were the only female in middle management.
Mhm. And so we had scooters because the warehouse was so huge. It was thousands of square feet.
Right.
And so we had these little scooters. And so that's the only way you could cover all this ground is to get on your little scooter and go
Right.
around the warehouse. So I was being watched and I was being challenged. So the guys would line up at the time clock, okay, to get ready to go home. So they were all there lined up. And I think I parked my scooter. I went into the ladies' room. I came out. When I go to grip the handles, they had greased the handles.
Oh, no.
You talk about having to think on your feet.
So what did you
And
do?
I was so pissed.
You were upset.
Inside I was, but guess what I did? I raised my hands. I said, oh my God, you guys love me. You finally are welcoming me to Atlanta.
Okay.
And you know what? They never mess with me again after that.
So
ever.
what did you do with the scooter? Did you get another one?
Oh, no. I went back in the bathroom and got some hand towels and paper towels and cleaned the grease off my hand, cleaned the grease off my scooter.
They were gonna get
Oh,
you
they
to a
thought I
point.
was going to cry. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's this little female, boo-hoo. She's going to cry. We're going to run her out of here.
Yeah.
They didn't know who they were dealing with.
That's right. Because you
That's
stuck
right.
with it and you still.
That's right. I had two brothers, though, that used to womp on me pretty good. Two younger brothers.
Kudos to the brothers, to Marty. Yeah, absolutely.
They toughened me up, Marty and Carl.
Absolutely. So good for them because you're amazing, all right? And you've had this really great journey, but you've also had a lot of challenges, Regent.
Sure.
You and I have had these discussions, and it upsets me to hear that. I'm glad that times are different, right? There's still a lot of work to be done in this space, but to the level of cruelty to someone in that space who's just trying to do the same thing that they're trying to do, and that's survive and be successful at what they're doing and, have a good life for their family. Everybody's after the same things, right?
We want the same basic human needs.
Absolutely. But
love and acceptance.
You get nothing from being cruel to someone. So I'm glad that the workspace has changed for the better and that there are laws and policies, but also more awareness. But that hasn't happened. It couldn't have happened without people like yourselves that really stepped into the fray early on. And going back to the opening comments, progress just doesn't happen by accident. It happens because people like you, women like you, stepped into this and you stuck it out. So I want to thank you for being who you are, not just as a mentor and a great boss, and now obviously at the national level, using your voice and your talents to advocate on behalf of presidents and students and colleges, but really for sticking through all these challenges. So when you were dealing with these issues like that one that you just mentioned, why didn't you just give up?
You think I'm going to let them get my goat? There's no way. There's no way.
Yeah.
I'm not Lolly's daughter.
So
in fact, I have my mom's bracelet on. I wear it every day that my brother made for her.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's with me.
Yeah.
I had a strong dad too, but it was really my mom. Because,
so let's talk about that. So your mom wanted you to have all the things that obviously she didn't.
Right.
Right. So she made sure that you went to school. She got educated. Right. And she pushed hard.
She pushed hard, but you'll love this one.
Yeah.
She did not want me to learn how to type.
Okay, so walk me through that. Why didn't she want you to learn how to type?
Because she says, Carol, you have too much potential. I want you to be something way more than a secretary. Because in those days, most women were secretaries and doing clerical stuff.
So your mom...
I took a half a semester. And so thank God my husband was a good typist because in those days before computers.
So you didn't know how to type. So your husband was doing the typing.
Terrible. I hated it.
Good but your mom... But think of the foresight that your mom had on that. Yeah. She says, I want better for my daughter.
Absolutely.
And she did not want you to learn to type because you would have been placed in a position where you would not have been in a leadership role.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to go back to my mentor because she was the operations manager when I hired in my division. Now, I didn't work in the assembly divisions. I worked in the warehousing and parts
Sure.
plants and
Yeah.
warehousing. So she was the highest female in our division at the
But there weren't
time.
many of you to begin with.
No,
There
there
was just a
wasn't many of
handful.
it. So I had a report that was due. So she comes walking in, and
And
I'm
you don't
like,
know how to type.
I'm
That's
like, she
hilarious.
goes, "What are you doing?" And I thought she was going to yell at me for typing, or
Did
for
she know why you didn't know how to type?
no, I don't even think. But here's what she said to me. She goes, "We didn't hire you to type.
Oh,
We have a
okay.
secretarial pool for that."
Okay.
And I loved it. I thought, "Oh
Yeah,
my
because you were
God,
doing the yeah, that's
yeah, go to the secretary and let
what
her
a
do
great
the
story
typing."
but your mom, the
But
foresight that your
yeah,
mom said, if you learn to type, you're going to pigeonhole yourself into a
yes, she
position
was
that,
worried.
wow,
I know it
very
because
forward
that is what
thinking.
happened in those days.
Absolutely. But she was
Absolutely,
aware of that.
yes.
Yeah. So let me ask this. So what does, obviously you've had this great run, and you've had to be courageous in a lot of areas because you've also moved around a lot.
Oh,
You've
so
you've
many.
climbed the
Yeah.
ladder. You've been all over the world. You've got a really great story, Carol, and I really enjoy every time that I learn something different. I had not heard the typing story. That's a new one for me.
Yeah.
But what does courage look like as a leader? What does courage look like as a female leader? Doing all the things that you're working on now.
Well, I heard Elizabeth Doyle speak at my niece's graduation from Ohio State. So this goes back to, gosh, this had to be, oh, like early 90s.
Hmm.
And I remember it to this day because she went like this: "Do not be deflected from your goals."
You remember
I
this?
remember it. I mean, all through her speech, she'd come back and she'd take her fist and she took her palm. "Do not be deflected from your goals."
This was a big moment for
That
you,
was a
and
huge moment for
yeah.
me. And I've done it. I don't if I want something badly enough, I don't take no for an answer. I'm going to go find a way to do it.
I
And
have learned that. Yes, about you.
and one of the
Yes.
guys at GM even taught me this one. He says, if you've got an obstacle in your way, it's your job to figure out how to get around it.
That's it.
I mean, because sometimes you can't break through, you can't go through it.
Yeah.
You have to figure out if you're going to go to the right, you're the left, if you're going to go back up and then go around. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. What separates, in your opinion, because as we talk about, all the challenges that higher education is having, and you're obviously in the thick of this because you're getting all the voices from across the country on the challenges that we're having as
Yeah.
institutions. What do you think makes good trustees different from really great trustees, right? So there are trustees that are transactional in their approach to how they provide support to the college. And then there are trustees that are transformational. I put you in the latter part, right? Because you always had great perspective, big ideas, right? And
Yeah.
they weren't ideas that were so far out of reach that we couldn't attain them. When we would talk about what programs are we going to work on, how do we serve business and industries, let's connect to partners that are going to support the college. How do you separate, or what advice would you have for new trustees that are coming on board to serve a college, in terms of the difference between being transactional and being transformational?
I'd say I didn't come out of higher ed, and that article even talks about that because I didn't even think I was qualified to be a trustee, regent. We call them regents.
Yeah.
But I did have a business background, and my girlfriend said, "You have common sense, and they need people with business backgrounds and common sense." So
Yeah.
I thought, well, I can do this. I can do this. But I learned as soon as I was elected, I really didn't know a whole lot about higher ed. So I started studying. And
Yes,
you have
you
been a
did.
wonderful mentor to me there.
I remember we had a discussion. You said, it feels real familiar but foreign at the same
Yeah.
time. And we were in Las Vegas when we had that conversation, and we talked about, yes, I go in a foreign country, things feel familiar, but you're driving maybe on the opposite side
Yeah.
of the road. The electrical plugs are a little bit different, and it's a great analogy. It feels familiar to the world of business, but higher ed is its own conversation. But
Oh, is it?
I'm a big believer that, especially now, Regent, I think that the environment that higher ed finds itself in, you need board members that have been entrepreneurial to help navigate
Yep.
this landscape. I think that, the organizational structures that were propped up 200 years ago in higher education
Aren't there?
don't apply
No,
anymore.
they don't.
There's things that are still important, obviously things like shared governance and the participatory nature of, um, getting people together to work on big ideas, big projects at the campuses that help serve our students. but the entrepreneurial spirit that comes from the business world, and many times that comes through our board members, right? Because as presidents, we have been raised in the world of higher ed, right? Most
Right.
presidents,
Right.
we work our way through the many different facets of student services, enrollment, academics,
Right.
all the things that, business, all the key aspects of being an effective college president. But rarely do we have the opportunity to sit down with business leaders and talk about the entrepreneurial spirit. But when your board members are wired that way, you get that all the time. So I always appreciated those conversations. Why do you think it's important in this day and age to have that entrepreneurial spirit as a college and as a trustee?
Because our world's changing so fast.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a oxymoron almost, you say that, because we've said that for years. But I mean, with the advent of AI,
AI,
and how many,
technology.
you probably know the number better than I do, how many jobs they say are going to be
Oh,
gone.
yeah,
But the jobs that are going to be gone are really going to be replaced by other jobs.
yeah.
So we're still going to need a talented,
Sure.
educated workforce.
It's just how do we get them the skills for these more comprehensive, more advanced jobs? I
Right.
think people are very resilient and adaptive, but the challenge is do we want to go through the challenges of doing rigorous academic programs to get to the jobs that are being created while others are being displaced?
And we have to, I've been on the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee. That's been one of my interests. I'm better at that than I am at business, finance, and facilities. I
Right.
mean, those are the number crunchers. But I know that's important. Don't get me
Sure.
wrong. But I really think it's important that we, at the academic side, we have to keep up with what industry is demanding of
right.
us, and we have to lean into them. And what do you need from us? We have a wonderful partnership in Reno with our Truckee Meadows Community College, who was
Yep.
your sister college down the street, with Panasonic and the lithium battery plant that we have through Tesla out not even an hour from Reno. It's like a
Yeah.
45-minute drive
Yeah.
out.
At
So
the park.
that's really important. We have to stay up on all that technology.
Yeah, I think it's important for obviously the CEOs and campus leadership, but trustees to also have that entrepreneurial kind of backbone. But for me, our board, for example, they're very entrepreneurial. That's been very helpful because you get a great soundboard and a different perspective about, hey, have you thought about it like this? And sometimes you're like, what? You know what? We didn't, but that makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
right? So I think a lot of voices that lean into the conversation with the right purpose.
Mhm.
Everybody wants the best for the institution, for our students, for our community. You get some really great byproducts. Let me ask you this, Regent. So you've been around a lot of different environments that require leadership. You've stepped into a lot of environments that where you've been the leader. You've also seen lots of leaders fail because you have the difficult job of hiring and sometimes firing presidents, right?
Right.
Where do leaders fail?
Leaders fail when they don't have the courage to do what's right.
Right. Sometimes it's as clear as day, but they're not willing to do
Yeah.
it. The political will to make difficult
Political will,
decisions.
sometimes a personal,
Yeah.
because we're all relational. I mean, we want to get along. And, I see that even in with 8 presidents and we have our chancellor, that there's some personal relationships that I don't think are healthy
Right.
because you're in that.
So how do you have those conversations? Now with you and I had that. Now, thankfully, for the record, folks, she never had a difficult conversation
No,
with me.
I didn't have to because
we-
you were so darn good.
We always had a great relationship.
We didn't
but
want him to leave too. I have
I
to say that on
appreciate
the
that,
record.
Regent.
We
Yeah.
tried everything, and I've even called you a couple times. Hey,
Yeah.
we got an opening for this. Hey, we got an opening for that.
I
But
appreciate that, Regent.
yeah.
But there's no place like home, right? So
Oh,
even
I
though
hear you. That's why
Nevada
we're back in
yeah.
Nevada.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that you've spent some time in our community because you get to see how wonderful it is and why I've landed in an amazing spot. But you and I, thankfully, never had to have the conversation that says, hey, Vince, you're not doing what you need to do.
No.
Therefore, you got to do these other things. But
I was
I-
only concerned about those gopher holes on your baseball field.
I know the Gophers were all over the place and
They
causing
were.
issues. But if that was the worst thing that came to it, then it was a good. But you also have to have these difficult pieces, and you've had to do it, right? So, um, if they're not able to make those difficult decisions or have the courage to do the right thing, what else have you seen that has caused people to not be successful in the role? Because there are some people that just take to it, right? It's almost like they were ducks in water and they
Right.
were born to do it. And others, you see them take some pretty difficult missteps, right? So and you watch it from afar, and you can provide as much guidance as you can, but um, sometimes we put the blinders on, right? And
Right.
we're not receptive to the feedback that people like yourselves, the bosses or the people that are in charge giving us. How do you communicate to presidents or to leaders that you have within your scope that says, "Hey, here's some things you can adjust." How do you present that conversation in a way that they're going to be receptive?
Well, I have tried. I have a colleague that I really tried hard when he first came on to help because I felt like he was like 30 years behind the times.
Mm.
And it was really sad for some of his comments that he made were like put your nails on the board and
Yeah,
go down. It
difficult
was
to
just,
hear.
oh, it was so hard to
Yeah,
hear. And I remember taking him out to lunch and just trying to say, you need to open your eyes.
yeah.
This is not the same state. You may have lived here 30 years, but our state has
And
changed.
evolved and modernized
Yes.
and yeah,
And he
different
didn't
times.
understand that whole concept of closing the achievement gap.
Right.
And all we're trying to do is get everybody
Everybody to
on the
be
same
successful. That's it.
everybody.
Yeah.
And there are
Everybody wins.
gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. There are gaps and there's a lot of reasons for those gaps, but it's important to if you can focus on the success of the students collectively as a board, as a president, as the leadership team at the institution, the students win. And what I
Absolutely.
often say about that is that, but so does the community, because if you put more
Yes.
educated people into the community, it's always a better community. Educated communities are better communities, right?
Absolutely.
Better jobs, more taxes. People have different kinds of jobs. They've got benefits. They've got career changing or life changing jobs through their career, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah, but you do that through an education. So
Absolutely. And
very
let's
important.
face it, I mean, I'm at the age where I want people on the tax rolls
Oh, absolutely.
because I
Yeah,
want my Social
that's
Security to
right.
be there,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Let me ask you this, Regent. So you talk about this individual a little bit, and obviously, he was having some, I would say, some generational conflicts, right? Just internally,
Absolutely.
he's living in a different time than what it is now. How do you also work with difficult personalities, right? Because you're not just dealing with one institution. Your
Yeah.
trustee position is very different than you're dealing with 8
Right.
institutions. So very large, very small, rural, urban, suburban. You have the full. You also have community colleges and R1
R1, two
institute.
R1
Yep.
universities,
So
state university, 4 community colleges, and
yeah,
they do go from the size at 4,000 all the way up to 35,000.
yeah. So you got everything,
Yep.
everything and in
And a
between.
research institute.
So how do you have difficult conversations with people when you need to have them as a leader?
Well, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
You I
But you've
always
always leaned in with empathy. You've always
well,
been. I always say it's you're like the velvet hammer. You come in and you've got let me put the glove on and then kapow, right? So
I don't
uh,
come in swinging.
no, you
No,
don't.
I
Yeah,
don't, and I
yeah,
don't wanna swing. That's
yeah.
not who I am,
No,
and you have to be able to communicate. I mean,
yeah.
communication is probably the key to any good leader.
But what I've always appreciated is that you always come from a perspective of, I want what's best for you. I want what's best for the institution. I
Yep.
want what's best for the students. And I think that if people are receptive to that, the message gets across them, hey, and you know what, Regent, if a leader doesn't believe or understand the idea that he or she is not perfect, because none of us are,
No.
there is always room for growth. There is always room for improvement, for enhancements. You never stop learning. In this day and age, Regent, I often talk about this concept of in 2026, students, but so do leaders and trustees and anybody who's in a position of authority, in 2026, you have to be able to learn new things.
Right,
You have to be able to unlearn what you just learned
right.
because it's moving, to your point, that fast.
So fast.
But then you'll have to absolutely relearn a whole bunch of new things, right? You're going to have to learn. You're going to have to unlearn all this stuff because it's obsolete. And then you have to move into the space where you're learning all over again. And I think what's difficult is that people, this is all of us, we don't like change, right? We like the idea of, what used to be 30, 20 years ago, you'd go to school, you became whatever you're going to become, and then you kind of just went through your career and you retired at some point. But now, people today, when they graduate our institutions, they got to keep lifelong learning.
I was just
Everything
gonna
is
say that
changed.
word,
Yeah,
lifelong learning. So important.
so important. Everything is changing so rapidly. So you have to kind of keep that focus laser like, right?
Yep,
You got to
yep.
say, okay, you got to learn, you got to unlearn what you just learned. And tomorrow you're going to have to learn something new if you're going to be compatible,
Right.
if you're going to be viable as a leader. And to your point earlier, people have lost a lot of trust in institutions of higher education, right? Because they're not
Yes.
delivering on the promise that was.
Right.
So there used to be this social contract that said if you come to the college, if you get a degree and whatever you're going to get a degree and it's going to lead you to a better life, right? Now with all the changes in technology, is that a guarantee anymore, right? So when that social contract gets broken,
Yeah.
people get upset. So our jobs as leaders is to make sure that our graduates are capable 21st century graduates. They are not only able to secure a great future, but they thrive in new environments. They understand critical thinking and
Yeah.
taking these modern approaches with some very basic elements to interactions, right? Because at the end of the day, to what you were talking about, those relationships are so important.
Important.
Everything happens with that.
Yep.
Yeah. So what are some of the tips you'd give the audience about building relationships? Good
Well,
relationships
unless you're
anyway.
going to be a researcher in a lab by yourself, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there are people that prefer not to
Sure. And
build
that's okay.
relationships.
There's something for everybody,
There
right?
is, and I
Yeah.
remember taking that test when I was young, aptitude test, and it's different. I think you remember when we brought that aptitude test into Nevada. It was done on pictures. You remember that? And the
I don't know
Rogers
if I was there
Foundation
for that.
helped us with the funding for that.
Probably
Because
before me.
okay,
Yeah.
a lot of students don't really know what they want,
Sure.
and it's it's hard to start pay your and go to the class but oh, that's not what I want. But we do know what we want. We've just got to dig in and find it.
Yeah.
And I
Find that
remember
purpose.
taking that aptitude test,
Yeah.
and it pinpointed me exactly.
You know, when we've talked to aptitude and to what students are going to do, often tell students, because I have an open door policy, you have an open door
Yep.
policy, and sometimes we're going to learn as much from our students as we hope our students learn from us.
Absolutely.
But I often tell students it's not just about, because you hear people say things like, "Well, do something that you really, really love," right? Well, if I love being the manager at a museum, there's only so many managers of museum
Right.
jobs that are out there, right? So, yeah, purpose is important, but to your point on the aptitude, do something that you're good at,
Yeah.
right? Do something that you're good at. It's not just about, well, do I enjoy what I do? If I like playing video games, and if there are no jobs in that space, if there are, you can, possibilities, but if there aren't, then what are you going to do, right? So it's really about, yeah, find things that you're passionate about, but find that purpose and the things that you're good at, and that's where people thrive. That's where
Yes.
people thrive
Yes.
when they're doing something that they're passionate about,
Yeah.
sure, but when they're good at something, and we all have these natural aptitudes. So I'm glad to hear that they're doing some pre-testing to kind of shepherd students into different paths early on that they're going to be good at.
Yeah, and I used to volunteer a lot with Junior Achievement,
Yeah,
which I think is a
it's a
wonderful
great
program. And I'm
organization.
not here to plug them or anything,
Yeah.
but I got
We
a
have a
lot
local
out of it.
chapter. It's
Oh,
it's a
I think it's a great
it's a
program
great
for kids.
organization. Yeah.
I've done from first grade through high school, and when I was in high school, I was in Junior Achievement.
That's awesome.
And remember making um, tablecloths or something. We sprayed them with daisies in those days. But anyway,
Yeah.
I would tell the kids, you're probably going to work for the next 40,
That's right.
45 years.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to get up every day and go to work
Got to face the world.
and absolutely face the world. And
But you also got to be successful in that world,
yes,
right? So
yes.
we've been blessed with, I have been blessed with such amazing opportunities. Serving in this, at the privilege of serving at Brazosport College, the same way that I had the privilege, because you hired me to serve at your institution
Yeah,
and
I
every
was.
institution before that. I've always taken to heart the privilege that we have being in these roles, because
Yeah.
people are trusting us to make the right decisions,
Right.
to make big decisions, to ensure that people in the community are getting the best educational services. So all of those are really important. Yeah.
Right. And I see the same thing as a trustee or region in Nevada. We're also elected, as you are in
Yeah.
Texas, correct?
Yep.
And we do have term limits, but
Well, thankfully for my board, we do not have term
you
limits, and I've
don't.
got an amazing board. So, but
Yeah.
you guys were also really great to me. So I appreciate those areas. Let me ask you this, Regent. So much of your success has been because of your grit, your ability to stick to it, your tenacity. Define that for me. What does that mean? What does it mean to have that grit, that persistence? I had a boss who would tell me persistence counts.
It
Stick
does.
to it. Make it happen no matter what. Don't give up. She always gave me these really her mantra was persistence counts, and she was right. It
She's
really
totally
does.
right.
So how do you define that? How do you define persistence, grit, sticking to it? As everybody talks about grit. Oh, we got to give people grit. Well, how do you get somebody grit? So how do you
Well,
define that? Well, let's backtrack a little bit.
okay.
Why stick through all the challenges that you had?
Well, I go back to you have to believe in yourself,
You do.
and you have to have that self-esteem's got to be there. And that I think as a parent, that's probably the greatest lesson you can teach or give your children is to have a good self-esteem.
Yeah.
And I certainly had that from my parents, and I was one of the lucky ones that my parents were never divorced. They were married 61 years, so I
Had a great home life.
yeah, I had a great home
But your
life. And
mom, that lesson that your
yeah,
mom, she didn't, as I understand it, she didn't have the same opportunities,
not at
right?
all,
Not at all.
not at
So
all.
she had a very different upbringing, but she was so focused on you not be so. Yeah, kudos to your mom, Regent, for getting that
Because her
because
dad had like maybe a eighth grade education. He came over from they came over from Italy,
yeah,
and they came to the Boston area, but there
the
was
American
no
success story.
yeah, there was no emphasis on education though.
Yeah,
And I used to ask my mom about that, and she said, Carol, they were ignorant. They didn't know.
we did.
They
Yeah,
just
I
didn't
mean, my
know.
mom and my dad. My dad went to sixth grade. My mom
Yeah.
she never received an education, but they knew the value of it.
Yes.
They knew the
Yes.
value of it. They didn't know the story of how to get you there, but they knew that it
Right.
was valuable. I remember having discussions with mom and my dad, and my mom would push, "You have to get an education. You have to get an education."
Yeah.
She didn't know how to get me an education because
Right. And I'm a first
yeah,
generation
yeah,
student. So my parents didn't know how to navigate any of that.
yeah.
And I remember in high school, my counselor didn't like me because her little pet and I had kind of
You came to fisticuffs.
no, it involved a boy.
Oh, it
We
always
had
does.
dated, but then he liked this
Oh
other
my
one,
goodness
and then
gracious.
she took it out on me. So I never even applied for a scholarship in high school because this counselor stood between me and that. That's the one time I did back down because I knew she would
But you were
never.
also in high school.
I was in high school,
Yeah.
yeah, and I
But
knew
what
I
about
wouldn't
the
get any
rest?
money.
The rest of the time you didn't stand down, and
No.
so at some point you developed that grit. So, well, let me ask you this: what's the difference between having that grit and being stubborn? Because there's two different
Oh,
things.
there's two different.
Yeah,
My sister was stubborn,
yeah,
and she was twice as smart as me, honestly. I mean, I don't know if she had a photographic memory, but she was so smart, but she was so stubborn. It got in her way of success. It
yeah,
really did. And I
yeah,
was the opposite. I was average,
yeah.
but I had
But you never,
drive. I
yeah,
had
that's
drive,
yeah.
and I had motivation, and I had
I
ambition.
I've always said the same things. I may not be the smartest guy in the room. I said, but no one's going to out hustle me. They're not going to
Yeah,
outwork me.
that's
I
right.
remember the interview that you and I had when I was being hired, and you asked me that. I said, Regent, I said, I may not have all the answers. I said,
But
but I know where to find them.
yep.
And I said, and no one's going to outwork me. And you have to really believe that
Oh,
because if there isn't, you don't have a cheering section, right?
all
You
right.
you don't have a cheering section, and in the position I was in, I'm going to another state. There's a lot of competition. Everybody wanted to be in that area, and you have to bring you got to bring the heat, right? I
Yeah.
often tell folks you got to bring the heat, the smoke, and the fire if you're going to get into these roles because you've got one shot to impress people. But for me, that's always been a big part is you got to have that drive, that motivation. I think the challenge is if it's not intrinsic, and there's obviously a lot of debate about whether it's intrinsic or it can be taught. But there's a lot of factors that will come into that. So, for example, with your mom early on was instilling these
Yep.
values.
Values.
That's right. That says
Absolutely.
this is what you're going to do. You can be more than this. You
Yeah.
can accomplish all of these things. Kudos to your mom, Regent,
Yeah.
for really putting you into the world in a way that she did to have all the tools to be successful, to figure it out, and I mean, think of the impact and the footprint that you have across the country, reaching all these goals, and congratulations on all that you've accomplished.
Thank you so
What's
much.
next for Carol Del Carlo? What's on the horizon? What are you going to
Ah,
do this year? Because you're starting off your year.
well,
You're the chair. What's you're going to take care of the CEOs and make sure they're taking care
right,
of themselves. But
right.
what's next
Well, we have the AACC conference in
in
Seattle
Seattle?
in
I will be
April.
there. Yep,
You'll be there,
I will be
and
there.
that's for those that don't know. That's the our sister organization to the trustees The AACC's for the presidents.
Yeah.
American
So
Association of Community
that's
Colleges.
going to be with our dear friend Darian
Darian
Pollard.
Pollard, who
So
was also in
I'm
Nevada.
hoping to have her on the podcast.
Oh,
Wow,
she'll
did
be a
she land a huge job?
uh,
She is. Yeah, I'm really happy for her. I'm really happy for her, and I'm very proud of being a friend because she,
yes,
she embodies and imbues a lot of these same
yep,
qualities of being a fighter, being
fighter.
tenacious, big ideas, big bold
Yep.
ideas. So now she stepped into the biggest job in the
I know
country.
it.
So holy cow, here we go,
A-
rides on.
And I was at the AACC conference because the 5 members of the executive board for ACCT do get to go to those every year.
Yeah,
So we were all in Nashville last year when
when you found
the
out.
current CEO was announced his retirement.
Yeah,
And I didn't wait. I immediately got on the phone and said, "Oh my God, Darian, got the perfect job for you."
yeah.
And I don't take all the credit, but I called her and
Yeah,
said, "You got to apply," and
she has
certainly
to.
she
Yeah,
did
it
apply.
worked out.
And oh yeah, it
Yeah,
worked
I'm
out
looking
great.
forward to having her on the show. Let me ask you this, Regent. So we've talked a lot about a lot of things that have helped you be successful in a lot of different things. But in your role as trustee for a very large organization with thousands and thousands of students, with thousands and thousands of employees,
Hmm.
with a lot of people with a vested interest in what happens in your system, how do you handle criticism as a trustee and as a leader?
Well, it's funny you asked that because we had public comment um, last week. We had a special meeting, and we had a former faculty senate chair from one of our institutions, got on the phone and was very critical of the board, and she called us. Oh, what'd she call us? Starts with an F. I can't think of the word. Um,
Farce, I believe.
Farce. That was it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She called
I
us a
keep up with
farce.
different things, Regent.
Yeah,
So
I had told you that because I think you even know her. And first of all, you got to consider the source.
sure.
I mean, this is a negative person.
And
I
sometimes
find
they're
to be
upset.
negative.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're upset. So, and I don't think you can take 13 people and lump them all into one heap
you can't.
because
Everybody's different, and you
everybody's
got
different, and there's some. Yeah, we've got
it's
issues
part.
just like anybody does. We got some great
Sure.
regions and we got some lousy regions.
Well,
You know?
it's part of the process. You're going to have a wide berth of individuals that bring different gifts to the
Yeah,
table so
that's
that you
right.
can navigate some of those
Right.
pieces. But the criticism part, I've often said, look, we're never going to get everything right 100% of the time,
Right.
right? We
Right.
we try the very best that we can. We try to bring success in all that we do. Sometimes we're not going to hit home runs all the time,
Right.
right? So you have to be. It's not just about being thick-skinned. I think it's also important to understand the frustration that people have in why they're saying certain things,
Right.
right? Because it goes back to the idea that even a broken clock is right twice a day, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you have to stop to think, okay, so I've been called this. That's a byproduct of being upset at something else, right? So what went into the decision? How can we explain why we did it, right? So all those pieces, come into play, but it comes with the job, right? So you
Yeah.
have to. I tell new leaders, it's important to think about you're going to be criticized, right? You have to
Absolutely.
be.
It goes with the
It comes
territory.
with the territory. And it's
Yeah.
not about being comfortable and saying, "Well, it doesn't matter. I don't care." You don't want to take that approach. I've always believed, okay, you're being criticized on something. Okay, why are you being criticized? What can you do about it in terms of did you take any missteps? Could you have done anything? That's why I'm a big believer in future proofing the you want to minimize the failure of the you want to minimize uh, the possibility of failure, right? You want to maximize success,
Sure.
and that takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of taking time to process. One of your presidents, Brian Sandoval, who used to be former governor, well, I'm also hoping to have on the show at some point, a good friend of mine,
And mine.
and yeah, and
He's
obviously of
wonderful.
yours. But he would say, I would always learn so much from him
Yeah.
just from sitting down and listening whenever I had a chance to sit next to him. And he said something about whenever you're making important decisions, he goes, if you've got 2 minutes, 2 days, 2 weeks, take as much time as you have to make the right decision. And what he was saying was basically make sure that you're getting it right because
Right.
people are counting on your ability to make these decisions. So
I know we
Consider board.
just had a very difficult decision to make as a board, and it's one nobody wants to make, and that was raising tuition
Sure,
because we had a
always difficult.
$47 million budget shortfall.
Yeah,
And our legislature was specific. It was even written in the bill when they gave us the 47 million for the first year
yeah,
that they would not fund us that second 47 million.
yeah.
Although, there's a lot of backstory why it
Right.
was that much.
But the challenge that comes with is having to make a difficult
Yeah.
decision. I mean, students, it's tight for everybody. We've been very blessed at BC that our board has not raised tuition in many many years, but not all institutions have the same blessings. And sometimes you have to, whether you're a CEO, sometimes you have to bring it to the board. One of the things that I've learned is you never want to put your board in a difficult position as a CEO. Your job is to keep the board, whenever possible, protected from the things that could distract the board, right?
Right.
So you have to go through these difficult decisions that you're making very carefully, so that what you do bring to the board has been well thought through. You're minimizing that possibility of failure. You don't want to put them in a difficult situation unless you absolutely
Right.
have to. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you have to come to the board and say, hey, you know what, there's these instances where we're going to have to either raise tuition or do that. Fortunately, we have not been there, right? But other institutions do.
Oh, we have
And
another
yeah,
example.
yeah,
We had those ghosting students at one of our community colleges.
yeah.
In fact,
So what that is, just for the viewing audience, is these are fake accounts that come through the systems and they apply for financial awards, either through the federal system or through scholarships. And
Right.
these students don't exist. They're essentially a fraud ring that goes through there, but they target institutions very specifically. So yeah, I know that you were all dealing with that.
oh yeah,
So
we had an institution get hit for $7.5 million,
yeah, big
and that
dollars,
has
right?
to be paid back
Yeah, because the
to
feds
the
at the end of
federal
the day
government.
say they said, "Hey, you're responsible for processing these applications
Right.
in a specific way." So those are the types of things that you never want to bring aboard, right? Because then they have to deal with them. But it goes back to, I often describe, the human condition. We make mistakes,
Yeah.
right? But my job as a CEO is to make sure that our board is informed,
Right.
that we are transparent with our communications. We let them know all the good. We let them know all the challenges. And I think that when you take that approach as a CEO, the board members like yourself and the ones that we have here at Brazosport College are very grateful for having that form of communication, because it's never going to be all
Oh,
perfect. It's
absolutely. And
never
you
going to be
never want to surprise your
never
board.
for any
And I don't want to read
CEOs
about
out there.
something in
Yeah,
a newspaper
that's
either
right.
before
And
I've
you were
been,
very clear with me about that when I first started. You said, "Hey, we can have any discussion,
that's
but
right.
don't ever bring me surprises." And
Yeah.
yeah, you almost have to be. I often tell people, "Hey, only the paranoid are going to survive," and I mean that in a way that you want to make sure that there are no potential possibilities where that's going to get to the paper before it got to your board.
Yeah.
You have to be
Yeah.
very good about keeping them
Yeah.
informed of all the good, and there are going to be times that not everything is going to be
Oh,
perfect, and you have to
absolutely.
keep up with that.
Absolutely. We
Yeah,
all we've had some tough things over the years,
yeah,
but communication, key
absolutely.
component of good
Yeah.
leadership.
You have to take the time to communicate. That's it. I've seen a lot of leaders that have done it well. I've had great mentors, and I've also seen leaders that don't do that piece well. And if there was one piece of advice that I would give anybody that is in a role of having to report to an elected body or to your boss or to whoever you report to, in my case, I've got a board of trustees and board of regents for the college that ultimately decide whether I continue in the role or not.
Sure.
Um, but you have to make it a point to keep them informed in
Absolutely.
lots of different ways. In person, make sure you take them to lunch and visit with them, tell them what's going on. You also have to be mindful not to violate any open meetings laws, right?
Right.
You have to be careful
Right.
when you
Right.
navigate that and keep things very general. But emails, face to face
Yep.
communication, updates at board meetings, it's constant, because they never want to be surprised either. The last thing that they want to hear about is something in the community. They're like, "Hey, trustee or regent, I heard that this was going on." And if they don't know anything about it, well, that catches them off guard, right?
It
So
does.
we don't ever want to put a board in that kind of
Yep.
situation. So I appreciate you constantly drilling that in my
Yeah.
head. When I first got there, you're like, "Hey, I don't like surprises." I said, "Okay," so we are there. So Regent, as we approach the end of our podcast, I want to thank you for spending time in Lake Jackson. for coming to visit us while you were in San Antonio. You came to our area on your own dime. You
Yep.
traveled,
Yep.
and I appreciate you.
I did my
appreciate
Zoom meetings today for my committee meetings.
You were
that
busy
I'm
all day.
missing. I was
I kept
busy
saying, "Hey,
this
let me
morning.
take you here. Let me take you there." I got all these meetings, so I appreciate you as a person, as a leader. I appreciate you as my former boss, but more than anything, Regent, I appreciate you as a dear friend that
Oh.
I can still call and bounce all kind of ideas off, and I know that I'm always going to get the straightest answer from Carol Del Carlo. So I
I won't
appreciate you.
sugarcoat it. How's
No, you
that?
won't. You have never sugarcoated anything, but
Oh.
thankfully for me, I never had to have difficult discussions
No.
with you because you were always a great boss, and you always kept me out of the fray. So I appreciate that immensely because you gave me my first opportunity as a president.
Yeah.
So I can never thank you enough for that.
Do I have
So-
time to even tell that story? 'Cause
Sure, you got a few
oh my
minutes. Let's
gosh,
do
it was. So we had three finalists, if I remember right,
I
and
think I had how many? 108.
3 or 4 finalists, and one was an inside Nevada person that
Yeah.
most of us thought was probably going to get the job
Mhm.
until it was time to do the interviews, and that's why it's so important that you have a one-on-one interview.
You do, yeah.
And so the room we were at was small. So really it was there was 5 members of the Board of Regents in there, and then they had the advisory committee in there. But unbeknownst to me, there was a room linked to our meeting, and they could see on their monitors or whatever what was going on. They could hear everything and see everything that was going on.
Yeah.
Do you remember
No,
this? No, okay.
I know that what happened afterwards, but I was not aware. I remember when I was told that I'll never forget because they put you in the hallway,
Yeah.
and they had already told me, I think there was like 108 applications. There was a lot of people. It's a great job, right? So
Yeah.
I'm down to the final 3, and the lady who's telling me goes, "You are not." For me, I'm a very person people, right? Like
Yeah, oh,
I love
absolutely.
people, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the way I work is I want to make that one-on-one connection. And when I'm walking, they're like, you cannot make contact with anybody in that room. You're going to walk all the way across the room and you're going to sit in that hot seat. And I said, okay. I said, that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
So I took the walk of shame all the way to the front with all the eyes on you and all these people are in there. So it was a pressure cooker, but I think it was by design because I think
Yeah.
it took 3 days of interviews to
Something
come
like
to
that, and they
decision,
made sure. Yeah, you're right. You make sure that nobody sees anybody else,
Yeah.
and you're escorted and all that. But we get down to the vote, and I don't remember if it was unanimous. I think it was, but
I wasn't in the room. I just heard the
yeah, I'd
cheers.
have to look that
so,
back
yeah.
up. Oh, the cheers. That's
Yeah.
what I was going to talk about because we announced what the vote was, and the room next to us, which I didn't even know that people were there,
Yeah.
just exploded and erupted in cheers.
Wow.
You were the pick of the campus. And
I really enjoyed my time and
Yeah.
all the friendships. I'll
Yeah.
never forget that the next day the chancellor says, "I would need you to stay for the board meeting because you've been selected. Can you stay?" I said, "Sure." I said, "I will." So I was in a room with 2 regents, and the meeting is happening in Las Vegas. And all of a sudden, in the 2 hours of public comment that was going on, somebody says, "Hey, I just want to talk about this guy that you just selected at Western." And I'm looking like I don't know anybody in Nevada. I didn't know a soul. So the 2 regents turned around and looked at me as a friend of yours. I said, I have no idea who that is. I said, but whoever that was, to this day, I don't know who it was, said some really great things about the selection.
Oh.
And he complimented the board. To this day, I don't know who that was.
well,
because,
everything's on the public record, so we could go find that.
Yeah. So it
I-
was, but he said some great things. And the 2 regents looked over. He goes, "You know some people in Vegas?" I said, "I do not." I said, but I will. I said, "I will." So I remember
Absolutely, you
having
will.
that discussion with him.
He's
So
a legend still in Nevada, I have
I
to say.
appreciate that.
I know you wanted to come home, but you've left some deep ties in
I
Nevada.
did. A lot of friends.
A lot
and
of
you
friends.
amongst them.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. I
Regent,
feel the
thank you so
same.
much for
Thank
taking
you.
time
was
with us
great.
at Brazosport College. I wish you the best in your year of
Thank you.
being the big boss in charge. I'm so proud of you. And I
Thank
get to say,
you.
hey, I know her really, really well. So thank you for not just your friendship, but all of your networks. Your friendship means a lot to me. And I wish you the best. And you're going to do great as the big person.
It goes really fast. It's only a
It
year.
does. It's going to go by
So
quick.
we've already done our. I've had the privilege of going to London in November.
you
They
went up
sent
there?
me and the immediate past chair over. We go to the AOC conference. It's
Sister
the
institution,
Association of Colleges is what the UK has.
Yeah.
And they have 270. They don't have the word community in, but they have 270 colleges that's
Wow.
involved in
I-
workforce.
I wish you the best in all your
Thank you.
learning. You're
Thank
going to do
you.
great. Thank you so much for being
Thank
with
you.
us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
This was fun.
Thank you. Well, folks, thank you so much
Okay.
for joining us. This is our first part in a three-part series that we're going to have with amazing women. Up next, we are going to be interviewing and having on the podcast some really amazing local leaders. Don't miss that one. It's coming up. And then we are hoping to close out the Women's History Month with our trustees who make it happen for the college. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. Thank you for spending time with us and Regent Del Carlo as today's guest. We wish you all the best. And remember that BC is your home for all things higher education in our community. Thank you for being part of the Gator family.